Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to day 2 of Natural Scotland Week. It's wonderful to have so many of you back today, and I'm excited today because we're going to be learning something very cool. First of all, though, if you were here with us yesterday, can you tell us one thing that you learned yesterday? Don't worry, if you missed yesterday's lesson, you can always watch the recording later on. That's not a problem. You don't need to watch yesterday's lesson to get the most out of today. But if you were here yesterday, and you can think of something that you learned, maybe put that in the chat and share that with everyone. That would be very nice. Dr. Connor's class said they learned that sea urchins like to wear hats. And I have to admit, that was one of my favorite bits from yesterday too. I liked seeing the little sea urchin with the shell, I think it was, on its head. That's very sweet. I like that. And that termite mounds have their own ventilation. That is very good too. Mr. Bridle's class said we learned about our senses. That was a very interesting lesson from Nicola. I remember she was talking about how there's more than just the 5 senses that we think about. And we had a go at using all of our senses, didn't we? And pigeons know their north and south. That is also very cool. Pigeons seem to have a built-in compass. That's something that I definitely don't have. Hopefully after yesterday's lesson, you were able to go outside and find something beautiful in the world around you using your senses. If you did, please share what you found that was beautiful in the chat. I went outside after I finished work yesterday, and I was planting some flowers, and I saw the biggest bee ever. So I got to see that. It was beautiful. And also I was really enjoying the bird song outside. It was quiet when I was outside and I was able to hear the birds. Usually we can hear construction noises outside and lots of children playing, which are also, children playing is also a beautiful noise, but the construction had finished, so I could hear the birds as well. That was very nice. And some of the answers in the chat are you smell dandelions and bluebells. Dandelions smell surprisingly nice. Flowers, cherry blossom trees, bluebells, flowers and trees. Yep, all kinds of, lots of flowers, lots of cherry blossom trees out of there. Beautiful, especially a bit earlier in the last month, they had all their flowers on them. That was gorgeous. And someone saw rabbits as well, and bugs. Yes, bugs are beautiful too. So this week, we're going to be thinking about all the amazing nature around us and how we're part of nature. And to get us started, let's find out what you have in common with nature. Where in your body can you find a bat's wing? So something similar to a bat's wing. Where in your body could you find a structure that's very similar? Is it your foot? Put 2 hands up. Is it maybe in your hand? Put 1 hand up. Or is it in your ribs? Put your hand on your head. Think about what a bat's wing looks like. It's got bones, but it's got skin stretched over those bones. Where do you think your body might look something like a bat's wing? Lots of different guesses for this. No one's quite sure. So we've had hands and ribs so far. Lots of guesses. Don't worry if you don't know. This is how we learn things. That's okay. Just take a guess and see if you're right. I think ribs are the winning answer so far. Let's see if we're right, shall we? It's your hand. So many vertebrates evolved from a common ancestor, and so we have lots of things in common. We evolved a hand that is useful for grasping and manipulating small objects. We have opposable thumbs, so I can hold this rock. But bats evolved extremely long fingers with skin spanning between them, allowing them to fly. So many other animals have their own version, such as birds, reptiles, and many mammals, including whales. It's very cool. You can see how the bones in the bat's wing kind of look like big fingers. What do we have in common with a butterfly? Is it our heart? Put 2 hands up. Is it our blood? Put 1 hand up. Or is it lungs? Put your hand on your head. What do butterflies and humans have in common? This is a tricky one. What do you think that a butterfly might have that we do? They have lots of things we don't have, like wings. We don't have wings, unfortunately, but what do we both have? Lots of classes guessing blood. Lots of people with 1 hand up. And some people are thinking lungs. Let's see, because butterflies look very different to us, don't they? They don't really look like us at all. We don't look like them at all. I think most classes have had a chance to guess, so let's have a look at the answer. What do we think? Dr. Connor's class has changed their mind. I don't blame you. It's not an easy question, but that's okay. We can learn about difficult things by asking interesting questions. Sometimes being wrong helps us learn things. Let's see what's the right answer. It's a heart. So butterflies have a tube-shaped heart in their abdomen. They don't have blood running in their vessels like we do, but they instead have a fluid called hemolymph. And this surrounds their organs and transports nutrients. And they don't have lungs like we do, but instead they have openings all along their body called spiracles, and they connect to many tubes which takes oxygen directly into the butterfly's cells. That's very cool, but they do have a heart like we do. It's just shaped differently. Today, we are very lucky to be joined by our friend Alice Kenny from Butterfly Conservation. And Alice works in a very special campaign called Wild Spaces, which is all about transforming the UK into a butterfly and moth-friendly haven and recovering the meadows that we've lost in past decades. So welcome, Alice.
Morning.
Morning. It's great to have you here with us.
Thank you so much. So that's so cool that about butterflies. I am just going to try and why take control. Is that okay? There we go.
Yes.
Has that come up? Can you see my notes?
Nope.
Good. Just checking. Yeah,
No.
so I work on our Wild Spaces campaign, and the big thing about Wild Spaces is getting people involved in all things butterfly, moth, and actually just things plant and wildlife. Just getting us to think about wild spaces being a nice place to go and enjoy. One of the things we might be thinking about are kind of, well, what do butterflies and moths feed on? And actually they feed on weeds. So what we might think of as a pesky weed is a really important food source for lots of our butterflies and moths. So I thought we could have a little bit of a countdown to my top 5 weeds, but you can have your own, you can pick your own ones. But the first thing I wanted to ask was, what do you think is a weed? What would you call a weed, or what do you think defines a weed? So weeds are plants that grow a type of leaf, a bad plant that grows anywhere, a type of grass. Lovely. Oh, good answers. And yeah, a weed is kind of, it's something that we've decided. We've decided what a weed is going to be because people have decided maybe it's unattractive or annoying, but actually they're really important for our ecosystem and they play super important roles. Lots of our butterflies and moths have adapted to when the different weeds will be on show or when they'll be growing, and they use those as their food sources. So I have picked a few of my favourites. My first one, and this is going to be my top favourite weed, is this lovely yellowy, orangey, low-growing, carpet-covering plant, and it's called bird's foot trefoil. You'll find it in lots of different places, meadows and grasslands and verges. And if you're very lucky and have green grass in your school, it would probably be there if the grass was allowed to grow, and you might even have this one. This is one of my favourites because it is the caterpillar food source for a common blue butterfly. And this is the common blue caterpillar in there. And you can see it's looks like, if you look really closely, the caterpillar looks like the food plant that likes to hide in the food plant and be covered up and nice and cozy and try and stay away from any predators. It's also for green hair streak. So again, the caterpillars of green hair streaks will come along and they'll feed on the bird's foot trefoil. It's a nice one. And then once those lovely flowers come out, lots of other butterflies and moths and wasps and bees and hoverflies and all the other pollinators will come along and use the nectar source. So I'm going to try and see if I can turn my mic up. That's annoying.
Alice, you're
Sorry.
loud enough. It's just that your sound is very muffled.
Oh.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
It's okay, but it's better to know. 2 seconds, sorry, let me just plug in some headphones.
Oh, that will help.
There we go. Is this better?
Oh, that's so much better. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Alice.
Excellent. Sorry about that. Hopefully this is easier to hear now. So yeah, our bird's foot trefoil is one of my favorite ones. And if you don't have any long grasses or anything like that in your school, it's a really nice one to grow even in a pot. You can grow it in a pot and just leave it out in lots of nice sunny spots. So as long as it's a nice sunny spot, it will grow and you'll have all these lovely pollinators coming in and visiting your space. Bit of a funny one. Sometimes it doesn't get called bird's foot trefoil. Sometimes it gets called eggs and bacon because the little bits of red that pop up early on, and it looks like a plate of fried eggs and bacon. Our next weed is garlic mustard, which is another one of my favourites because it's a food source for a really nice little butterfly that you'll probably see around about now. I've seen lots of them flying about. So you find this in most places, places sometimes called wastelands. They like sort of disturbed ground, the cracks of pavements. You might see them growing along walls, and you'll quite often see kind of groups of them growing together, and they can grow really tall. And you'll see it in hedgerows, and you'll also sometimes see it on the edges of grassland as well. So caterpillar food source for our orange tip butterflies, one of my favourites. This is the mature egg. It's about ready to hatch, and it's orange, and it pops these on the stalk or the stem of the plant. And this is this little caterpillar. One of my favourite caterpillars because they're a little bit mean, they're a little bit feisty, and they do what they need to do to survive. And they will be cannibalistic if they don't have enough food. So if they don't have enough of this garlic mustard plant growing, they might eat each other because they have to survive somehow. And that's what they've decided they're going to do. So the female, she comes along and she will lay one egg. You'll always see one solitary egg on a plant or next to a stalk, and then she'll move along and she'll lay a new one and move along and lay a new one, so that they try and avoid them eating each other. But it's really important that we have these lovely weeds growing so that they can feed. Number 3 is nettles. Nettles, everyone thinks of them as stinging nettles and they grow everywhere and they annoy us and they get in the way of where we're playing, but actually they're super important. So you'll find them in really sunny spots, and they're a food source for lots and lots of our caterpillars or species. So our peacocks, this is all the peacocks grouped together, so they like to live in a colony and they'll make webs round about, and you'll see them hopefully coming up soon. And yeah, you'll see them in big groups together and they'll all be hanging out on the nettles together. Also our painted ladies and our red admirals. So this is our little red admiral on some nettle, and our small tortoise shells, and that's them on some nettles as well. So they'll all feed on that, but they don't like to eat lots and lots of things. They're super picky, so they want to eat some nettles. So if you can have some nettles on your school ground, you can invite all these lovely butterflies into your school grounds. Number 4, grasses. Just lots of long different grasses. So not our short grass that grows in a big mat of roots. These ones have longer roots and longer tall flowers on them, so they'll grow nice and tall. Really sunny space, you'll find them, or anywhere. You can put them in pots and things as well if you want to. But our ringlet butterfly and our meadow brown, they both like grasses, as well as lots and lots and lots of our moth species all like to feed on grasses. But they don't just feed on them as a caterpillar. A lot of our species will use the long grasses and these tufts of grass where it kind of pops out the ground and it sits a little bit higher and makes the grass lots of different levels. Lots of our nighttime flying moths will actually hide in the bottom of that grass during the day. And quite often you'll see them if you go along. And I'm not saying you should do this because we want to look after our butterflies and moths, but if you go along and you just disturb them, quite often you'll see lots of moths flying out because that's where they're hiding during the day, because it's a nice steady temperature, doesn't get them too warm or too cold, and they can hide in there away from predators. The grasses are another great one, but sometimes we just think of them as weeds. Number 5 is Devil's Bit Scabious. This is one of my favourites just because of the colour. I really like the colour of this one, and it looks a little bit like a lollipop. So it's got tall stalk, and then the flower sits on top, and it's lots of little different flowers. So it always has a good source of nectar and pollen, and it always kind of opens them up at different times, so that this, what looks like one flower, is actually lots and lots of flowers, and there's a nice steady supply of pollen and nectar for all of our lovely pollinator species. So some of our caterpillars eat this. Some of you might have some marsh fritillary near you, but that's more of a kind of specialised butterfly. It likes very specific areas. But also it's a really good adult food source for lots of things. You'll often see 6-spot burnet moths sitting on top, and they're one of our day flying moths, and they're a little bit fierce and hardy, and they quite happily sit out during the day. And you often see them feeding off of this. There we go, there's our 6-spot burnet. So quick video, so hopefully this works. And I'm hoping you all know the life cycle of a butterfly and a moth, but just in case, we'll do a nice little video to show you.
The life cycle of butterflies and moths is a wonder of nature. There are around 60 different types of butterfly in the UK, and more than 2,500 different types of moth. But every one of them goes through 4 clear stages of their life cycle: the egg, the caterpillar, the pupa, and finally, the adult. It all begins with an egg. Butterflies and moths lay very small eggs, sometimes on their own and sometimes in clusters. Most of the time, the female will lay her eggs on or near a plant that her caterpillars like to eat, as they can be extremely fussy eaters. Ew. Inside the egg, a caterpillar starts to grow. When it is fully developed and ready to hatch, the caterpillar munches its way out of the eggshell. Caterpillars come in all sorts of shapes, colours and patterns. Some are brightly coloured, some are carefully camouflaged, and some are incredibly hairy. Some don't even look like caterpillars at all. They have 3 pairs of legs and a number of special sticky feet called prolegs, which help them grip and move their long bodies. The main job of the caterpillar is to eat and grow. They eat and eat until they are too big for their own skin. The caterpillar then sheds its skin to reveal a new, larger skin underneath, ready to eat some more. Once fully grown, the caterpillar will look for a safe place to pupate. Some caterpillars pupate attached to their food plant, while others make a cocoon or burrow into the ground. It will then shed its skin one final time to form a chrysalis. Inside, The body parts of the caterpillar are broken down and reformed to make the adult butterfly or moth. This amazing process is called metamorphosis. After a period of transformation, the adult begins to emerge. With a few shakes and wiggles, the chrysalis splits and out it crawls. At first, it looks damp and wrinkled, but it pumps fluid into its wings until they are dry and strong enough to fly. Now, it is ready to find a mate and start the cycle all over again.
So, our lovely butterflies like all these weeds and use them for different parts of the life cycle. It's really important that we have lots of offerings of different weeds so that they can complete their life cycle all the way around. And that means that we need those lovely caterpillar weeds that those fussy caterpillars can come along and eat. But then we also need these nice different weeds that give out nectar and pollen at different times of the year, so there's always something available, because they don't just fly about during the summer. So that lovely peacock butterfly that we followed through its life cycle, it actually hibernates over the winter as an adult. So we might sometimes find them really late on in the year when we think there's not going to be any butterflies or moths flying anymore. We might find them into September or October before it gets super cold. So we even need weeds round about then so they can have their last final feed before they go hibernate for winter, and then that gives them a little bit extra energy for when they wake up. And then same again, when they wake up, maybe February time, if it's nice and warm, then we need lots of weeds out for them to feed off of then as well. So a few more weeds. There's so many that we would consider weeds because they just grow naturally and they pop up where we maybe don't want them to. Cowslips and knapweed and red clover. There's a knapweed. We've got lots and lots and lots of different flowers that would work for us as weeds. So we have a bit of a problem with our butterfly species, and the problem is that we've lost lots and lots of them through habitat change and climate change and kind of fragmentation of sites. So rather than species being all linked up together, they're all split up. And there's not many food sources in between the main food sources for different species to use. So we've lost 60% of our butterfly species. No, we've not. Sorry, we've lost 80% of our butterfly species since about the 50s. So we need to do something because we're really struggling. Our butterflies and moths are really struggling. So one of the things that I would like you guys to do, if you don't mind, this is my call to action from you learning about weeds today, is if you pop onto our website and you register your wild space. The wild space can be anything. It can be a small garden, it can be a big garden, a community space, it can be your school grounds, it can be everywhere. It can be your own garden if you've got a garden at home, or even if you've got a balcony and you pop a little planter on your balcony. That can be brilliant. If you put in the right kind of food sources, then that's ideal. So what I'd like you to do, if you have weeds growing in your garden or in your school ground, if you register your wild space on our Wild Spaces website, and then that way we can start to see those little links between all the different species, and we can start to give you some hints and tips about what you can do for your space. So we actually have a little bit of time. I think I've spoken too quickly as usual, so we have a little bit of time if anyone's got any questions about butterflies and moths. We can have a quick question. If anyone has any, you can pop it in.
Alice, while we're waiting for pupils to ask their questions, I've got a question for you.
Yes, please.
So you talked about caterpillars eating nettles, which made me very happy because I always seem to get stung by nettles when I'm outside. And I'm sure many other people do. So now I've learned that they're useful, that's good. I'll leave them alone now.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, is something else you can do with nettles? I've heard of people making nettle tea. Is that something you can do?
Absolutely. Make some nettle tea, some nettle soup. Lots and lots of people use it. And you can be very kind of sneaky and careful about how you actually pick the nettles. So we know that nettles sting us. That's why a lot of us don't actually like nettles, is because they sting us and they get us in our way. But if you very carefully kind of open your palm and you get the very, very middle of the leaf, and then you pull it, you're less likely to sting yourself that way. And you know what? If you do sting yourself, just try not to itch it, because that's the worst thing you can do.
That's very hard.
Yeah, it's very hard, and it gets in our mind, and it makes us just feel itchy all over. And so I spotted at the weekend a nice big cluster of peacock eggs on some nettles. And I did take some pictures, but it was so sunny that I couldn't really see the eggs on the pictures. So I thought it was a real shame. But I was going to pop them into my slides for you, but unfortunately it didn't work. So
there's lots of questions. People. If you'd like, can you see the chat, or would you like me to read some to you? Okay.
I can see the chat. I might pick up a couple of them, because there's just a couple of really, really good questions in here. And there's one or two that I quite like. I'm going to have to scroll all the way back up. Because there's a couple in here. How long do they live for? There's a few people asking that. So that's a bit of a tricky question, because butterflies and moths don't like rules. They don't like to follow the same pattern. They all like to do their own thing. So like they all have their own caterpillar food sources that they all want to eat. They're very specific things. They all have quite specific life cycles and how long they live. But if you're really interested, and if you've got any specific ones that you want to look at, then you can look at our butterfly conservation website, and there's an A to Z list of butterfly species. And if you go through them, you can pick what you've got coming up locally, and there's a little graph, and it'll show you different times of the year, and it'll show you what they're doing at those different stages of the year. So like our peacock butterfly is a nice one, because it will come out around about February time, and it'll start to look for a mate. And then round about now, you'll start to see the eggs popping up. So the female will lay her eggs in little clusters on nettles, or actually sometimes thistles as well. They quite like thistles as a food source. And you'll see them grouped together, and then they'll hatch. They'll eat as much food as they can eat, and then they will go into their chrysalis, and their chrysalis doesn't last too long. They don't have a particularly long chrysalis, but that'll be during the summer, and then you'll see them start to emerge again around about August to October, depending on how warm it is, or what your weather's like in your area. And then they'll feed a little bit more as an adult, and then they'll go and hibernate. So they'll find somewhere nice and kind of not too warm, not too cold, somewhere that the temperature isn't going to change. So we're really lucky where I live, because we quite often get hibernating peacock butterflies that hide under our shed. But actually, when you look at the closed wings of a peacock butterfly, they're really special. What they've managed to adapt is it almost looks like a dead leaf. If you look at the underside, so when they close their wings over, the underside of their wings looks like a dead leaf. So when they open their wings, they have these beautiful peacock, big eye looking circles on their open wings. And that's kind of scare off any predators, but also looks attractive to each other. And then when they close it up, you can't really see them, because it just looks like some dead wood or some dead leaves. And that's because they would naturally hide in piles of dead leaves. So one of the things that you can do in your garden, your wild space, when you register your school as your wild space, you can leave piles of leaves. As long as we don't go and play in them and move them around too much during the winter, peacock butterflies might come in there and hibernate. So we have a couple of species that do that, and they hibernate during the winter. And they have these, looks like dead material. So yeah, sorry, there's not a one question, or there's not a one answer to that question of how long do they live. It's a bit of a tricky one, but yeah, you can have a look and check it out, and they all have different times and different cycles, and it's really interesting. There was another one in here that was a really good one. Do all butterflies hibernate for the same time? No. Again, they they mix and match depending on their species. And the other thing that will depend, and what we're really starting to see is that butterflies and moths, they react to their external temperature. So the weather that's happening around about them, they have to react really quickly to that. So as we get our climate changing, we definitely see that there's differences in their patterns. So sometimes it's a little bit wonky around what's happening because our weather's a little bit wonky. There's so many good questions in here. What happens inside their cocoon? They kind of turn a little bit to jelly and then rearrange themselves into the shape that they need and start to form their scales. And that's another quite interesting one. Where they might have their chrysalis or their cocoon will depend on the different species. So one of my favourite ones, just to answer another question, what's my favourite butterfly, is an orange tip. And the orange tip they'll be flying around about now, they're mating, and if you're lucky, you'll see some eggs, and they're the ones that will turn onto orange eggs, and they'll kind of just do one egg here and there. They will attach themselves to a stick or a twig or a branch or something that's on a tree or a bush. And when they make their chrysalis just now, soon, it'll be green because the leaves are green. And they'll stay as that chrysalis over winter. And because they're staying as that over winter, their chrysalis needs to change colour to match the colour of the bushes and the shrubbery. So they'll start to go brown and it'll look like a dead leaf. And so it'll start off as a looking like a live leaf, and then it'll go to like a dead leaf. What did butterflies evolve from? Butterflies evolved from moths. So moths came first, and then our butterflies. Our butterflies are slightly fancy moths, but we also have some really fancy moths too. What's the difference between a butterfly and a moth? There's a few different things, but again, they don't like rules. So sometimes it is their antenna, so the way their antenna sits. Most of our male moths have fluffy antenna, so they can use one of those extra senses, and they can kind of smell the pheromones from the females. Oh, got lots of great questions here. So what's the rarest type of butterfly? I don't know about the rarest type of butterfly, but in Scotland we have lots of different very rare species because they like those very specific food sources. We're really struggling. They only have little pockets. So we have little pockets of butterflies that live in very kind of localized areas. They're very habitat specific around what they like to feed on, what they like for their weather. They all kind of stay in these little localized spots. So we have small blues. I think we had some Aberdeen schools in here, did we? We had some East Coast schools. So you will have small blue near you, hopefully. And they feed off kidney vetch, so they're very specific with what they like to eat. You'll quite often find them in really rocky areas like quarries or on like cliff sides, feeding off of their kidney vetch. So that's their food source. And we have a few pockets dotted around. They're quite often like a quarry. How do butterflies get their colour? So the colour is sometimes depending on what they might need to protect themselves from. So some of our moths and butterflies, they have little flashes of colour. So they have like under wings. When they open their wings, they maybe have this colour. Like our poplar hawk moth is kind of either buff or lilac-y coloured. And then if you give it a little fright, it opens it up even more, and then there's an extra flash of colour underneath and it's red. So though sometimes the colour is to scare predators. We have some that look like they've got owl eyes, so they rather than looking like a little delicate butterfly, it looks like there may be a big scary owl that's going to eat something or scare something away. Sometimes they want to be colourful to attract. Quite often the male is colourful to attract a female. And females quite often have more muted, gentle colours, and in that way they can hide much easier. And if we don't have the females, then we definitely don't have the young. So they're super important that they have slightly more gentle colours sometimes. Our common blue male butterfly is blue, but sometimes our common blue female butterfly doesn't have very much blue on her at all. and she's quite gentle coloured. How long do they live in a cocoon? Again, there's not one answer. They're all different times. Different times depending on what they need. There was one about how big do caterpillars grow. Sometimes it depends on what their food source is. So if they don't have enough food source, they might not grow too big, which can mean sometimes that when they go through their chrysalis and they do their metamorphosis, when they're an adult, sometimes they're slightly smaller if they don't have quite enough food. Why are moths attracted to light? So this is a funny one. We sometimes think they're trying to get away from the light and trying to hide from it because that's what they would do during the daytime. There's so many good questions in here.
Have you got time for one more? Do you think? Pick one more, and then the
One
rest
more?
of them
Yeah.
we can answer in the assembly on Friday. Because
Oh,
you're right,
perfect.
there's too many good ones. There was one about what is the most common predator for butterflies in Scotland. That one sounds like a good one.
That's the one I was trying to find. Yeah. So our biggest predator is probably birds. However, hedgehogs, if we all like hedgehogs, we all love a hedgehog. They're so cute. It's spiky and they just do their own thing. But actually, hedgehogs' diet can be something like 60% larvae or chrysalis of butterflies and moths. So that's fine. Butterflies and moths know this. That's why they produce in such big numbers, because they know they're not 100% going to survive. Some of them are going to be lost to predators. But you can start to see those links in food chains and food webs, where if we don't have all these butterflies and moths, then our hedgehogs might struggle. But yeah, birds are another one. So like blue tits will time when they're going to have their young to when all the caterpillars are going to be out. So that, yeah, they can have lots and lots of food sources around about the time they're going to have their young out. So it's a good one, but lots of different predators. Our biggest issue, unfortunately, is people and how we manage our space and how we want super tidy spaces and with shortcut grass, and we don't want long grass, we want it all one uniform level, and we don't like weeds. So that people are one of our biggest ones, I'd say. Yeah.
Well, I don't feel so bad now because my garden is absolutely full of weeds.
Good.
My neighbors both have very beautiful gardens, and then there's my mess. So I don't feel so bad now. I'm going to say I'm doing it for the butterflies.
Absolutely.
And the hedgehogs, apparently.
Absolutely.
See, we always learn something when we do these lessons. Today I've learned that nettles are actually good and that hedgehogs need butterfly larvae to survive. So that's very good. So thank you so much for that. Some people are saying they're having a hard time seeing the text on your slides, so they don't know the website to register their wild space. So we'll make sure that that's in the chat, and we'll put that information out for everyone to see. And all of these wonderful questions that you're still sending in, I'm so impressed. We will make sure that we save space in our assembly to answer some more of those, because I think that we found a topic that you're very interested in. So,
sorry.
That's okay. Don't worry about that. So here's a quick reminder of what we'd like you to do this week. Remember, we were talking about some of the activities that we had for you, as well as registering your wild space if you have a wild corner of your school grounds, or maybe my garden should go in there. That's a good idea. As well as that, we had our land art competition that we were wanting you to have a go at. Enjoy and connect with the nature around you and take part in our competition. Remember, we were talking about how nature is happiness, and we were hoping that you would find some natural items around your school grounds, nothing that you have to pick or take away from anywhere. Just like these pictures here are rocks that can be put back, or I think that looks like flowers or leaves or a piece of ivy. Something that you can put back where it belongs and make a piece of art that reflects how you think nature means happiness. Now, this one was done by one of my colleagues, and you can see all the pine cones and colorful leaves and painted rocks in there. That's a really good example. And then this one, which is a heart shape made from moss And there's also some pine cones in there too. So these are some good examples because these things can all be put back where you found them to make sure that you're not taking anything away from the spaces around you. We're not causing any damage. We're just appreciating nature for its beauty. And if you do one of these pieces of art, we would love to see it. You can always reach us at ecoschools@keepscotlandbeautiful.org, or we're on most social media platforms at KSB Scotland. So if you think of any other questions that you might want to know the answer to, you can always send them to us throughout the week, and we'll keep your questions that you asked earlier for Friday, which I hope you can join us then as well. Thanks again, Alice, for your time and your knowledge and all of your fun facts about butterflies. I think we all learned quite a bit. I hope you can join us for the rest of this exciting week about Natural Scotland Week, but that's all we have time for today. So bye for now.